Hello and welcome to the second edition of Rocket Launch Sports Picks. Today is the Wednesday thrust as we are staying consistent with the Space City sports theme. And today we're going to go through our picks from yesterday. We had two great games yesterday. I would say the Cavs versus the Pistons was a more competitive game. But of course the Thunder and the Lakers were hanging in there. But, the Thunder are just that much of a better team. And we did have a fight to the end in the Champions League with Arsenal and Atletico Madrid. We'll go through some of that, but we did get the right team here. Arsenal going to the final on a very decisive goal by Bukayo Saka right before the first half. With that being said, let's talk about our picks from yesterday, and we'll go through our picks for today. Tobias Harris was just under 14.5 field goal. Well, he was at 14. If he just put one more shot up, it would have gotten us our pick. Of course, it's always going to be times where there's narrow bets. James Harden had 2 first quarter points, only took 2 shots. He was subbed out at the 4-minute mark. He had much less of an impact on the game than I thought he would. Donovan Mitchell was still very shaky as well in the very beginning. Those were things that cost the Cavaliers. Especially on the road, they had to set the tone, and they did not. They were just very shaky early in the game. AJ Mitchell, someone who I thought was going to attempt a lot less field goals than he did. He went 7 for 16 yesterday. SGA had one of his quietest games in a very long time. One of those things where when I made the pick yesterday, I really thought that SGA was going to set the tone for the series like he always does. He's always a very imposing presence in the game. He's been so consistent, but he was not shooting very well yesterday. Slightly below league average, but definitely a very modest performance by his standards. You got Rui Hachimura, someone who now with another injury to Jared Vanderbilt, he's going to have to continue to step up for the Lakers. He had 18 points, 2 assists. That is a pick that we had from yesterday. And of course, Arsenal advancing to the final. Now, both legs of this aggregate series had very controversial penalty and non-penalty calls. I think they got them all right. Even the ones in this one that did not favor Atletico Madrid, they called the foul just before it. I didn't think the contact in some of the other ones was big enough, especially as far out in the box like it was in the first leg. But at the end of the day, Atleti had some chances. I think Sorloth should have done more with that at the end. I do think that Valkyries, however you say that Swedish name, the guy from Arsenal, he should have scored in the 65th minute, made it 2-0, but it was a good match all the way to the end. Enough about yesterday. Let's get to today. We got Julius Randle in this Timberwolves game. So we got the Timberwolves and the Spurs game. Very, very cutthroat first game. What a great defense the Timberwolves played. Victor Wembanyama was completely off. Julius Randle is a big part of that. But he played 41 minutes. He had 21 points in the first game. But we got to keep in mind that Julius Randle has had significant playoff struggles in the past, especially with the Knicks. And he's had such a huge workload in this series. Even with Anthony Edwards back coming off the bench, I think Anthony Edwards is going to have a bigger role in this game 2 of the series. And therefore, all these factors combine, our first pick today is that Julius Randle is going under 17.5 points. If you look at the head-to-head, this is going to be another big basis for this pick. Obviously, the last game, he did very well. He had a great performance, especially on the road. He was instrumental to them winning. But I do think he is going to regress more towards what he has done in 5 of his previous 6 games against the Spurs, and that is score a relatively modest amount of points, at least compared to his standards. That's what you can see here. But you can see in his last 20, only 6 of his last 20 it's happened in. You can see a lot of games here in the Denver series. So again, keep in mind with Nikola Jokic in there, Denver, pretty good defense. Also, a couple of those games being on the road. That's something where Julius Randle has kind of been a little iffy, but you can also see some 19s, some 18s, some times where he narrowly got past 17.5 points. With Anthony Edwards coming back, him having a bigger role, Julius Randle is bound to go under 17.5 points today. And again, he might bounce back later in the series, but again, don't expect the most consistent performances from Julius Randle. On to the San Antonio Spurs. On to the other side of that, we got a guy, Devin Vassell. He's a consistent starter for them. I'm a Florida State graduate. I love seeing him play at Florida State. One of the things I noticed about him since his days at Florida State and when Florida State had a chance before COVID shut down the season was that he takes shots from everywhere. He can go inside. He has great mid-range game, three-pointers. He shoots plenty of threes. And in the game one, he was 5 for 11 from the field, 6 three-point attempts. So that kind of goes back to what I've seen ever since he was at Florida State, is that he is very balanced in his shot selection. He can basically pull up from anywhere. And with that, we do have the pick that he is going to go over 4.5 two-point attempts. Again, he was a good player for them in 36 minutes when Victor Wembanyama was not shooting well, especially from three. He hit some mid-range shots when they needed it. I think he's going to continue on that trend today. You can see head-to-head against the Timberwolves, 4 of his last 5 games, he has attempted more than 4.5 two-pointers or 5 or more two-pointers. Look at the last 20. You can see that it's 50% overall in the last 20. But if you look at the 8 on the side here, he's really done it in 10 of his last 12. And it was one of the previous 8 that he attempted more than 5 two-pointers. He is bound to break that trend. Well, he has broken that trend in his last 12 games. He is bound to keep being a big shooter for San Antonio from the mid-range. And you can also see the last 10 as well. You can also see that a lot of teams against Minnesota has a very strong perimeter defense. You're going to see a lot of teams attempting a lot of two-point shots. You can see right here, Minnesota allows the 3rd most two-point shots in the league. So I think that's just another reason why I'm supporting the fact that is going to continue in this game 2 that we got here tonight. On to the next matchup, the Philadelphia 76ers and New York Knicks, a blowout in game number 1. Philadelphia is really going to have to bounce back today. And one player that I think they're really going to need today is Paul George. Paul George was relatively solid in game 1. He's only going to play about 20 to 30 minutes a game. I mean, he's not going to be a guy who's on the court that much. But I think the rest of his teammates are going to shoot the ball better. They're going to find better shots for him, and I think that's going to be a factor in this. However, this New York Knicks defense is overpowering them, and while I think Philadelphia is going to play better in this game, I still think Paul George is going to go under 8.5 rebounds and assists, much like he has in 13 of his last 20 games. And you can even see an even more convincing recent trend when you look at that 20-game chart. We're going head-to-head here. You can see in previous games against the Knicks, dating back to January and further back, he has been able to get more than 9 rebounds and assists. However, in the last 2 games, in the January 24th game and in game 1 of this series, that was not the case of him going over 9 rebounds and assists combined. This is one of those things where if Paul George can, not that he struggled, and obviously the whole team struggled, but if he does start to struggle like he has in the past in the playoffs, there is a chance that the Sixers are going to have him play less minutes. They really got to find the hot hands on this team. They got to continue to put in the players who can help them get back in this series, but I don't think it's going to be Paul George today. The New York Knicks defense is just too strong. They don't allow a lot of rebounds. They don't allow a lot of assists. Karl Anthony Towns and Joel Embiid is going to continue to be a solid matchup there, but Paul George does not seem to be the X factor here, as many people might think so. But we're going to have him under 8.5 rebounds and assists for this one. On to the Knicks and Jalen Brunson. We got Jalen Brunson going over 9.5 field goal attempts today. That's something that he has done in 7 of his last 10 games. If you look at the last 20 games, he's done that in 11 of the last 20 games. Again, a more convincing recent trend. You can see in 4 of those first 5 on the 20-game chart, he did not go over 9.5 field goals. Or 9.5 field goals made, I'm sorry. Not attempt, but made. He's one of those guys. Well, obviously, he's the focal point of the offense. He does so much for that offense. But the big thing with Jalen Brunson is the fact that he had a great game in game 1. He had 12 for 18, 35 points. He's 26 points per game in the regular season, but it's also the fact that 12 of his 18 attempts were two-pointers. He is a good shot selector. The 76ers defense looks very flat. A lot of open shots for the New York Knicks in that game one. I think the same thing's going to continue for game two. New York is simply a much more physical team. They're going to continue to show it, and that's going to continue to bring great shots and made field goals for Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson, over 9.5 made field goals, 2 or 3 pointers. That is our pick for this one. And last but not least, just like yesterday, we got a very exciting match for all of our soccer fans here. Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich, an incredible first leg last week where Bayern Munich got in front. Paris Saint-Germain was able to bounce back, get to a 5-2 lead. But one thing that I felt was very instrumental in that game was the fact that down 5-2 in Paris, Bayern Munich was able to come back and rescue 2 goals. I think that momentum is going to carry on going into their home match, especially because in game one, they did not have their manager, Vincent Kompany, on the sidelines. You know how great of a manager he is for big players. Having the home fans, having Vincent Kompany back, and also some other head-to-head and away home record supporting stats. Our pick is that Bayern Munich is going to overcome the goal deficit and that they are going to advance to the final against Arsenal in Budapest. Let's look at some of the head-to-head here. You can see that in the last few years, Bayern has won 9 of the 16 games against Paris Saint-Germain. Now, we got to keep in mind, Paris Saint-Germain has been an ever-evolving team from the days with Kylian Mbappe, Neymar, Lionel Messi, to the team they got today. Much different team. But even in the recent days, we go back to last year in a group match game or a league phase match where Bayern Munich did win 1-0 at home. They also, the couple years before that in the round of 16, they were able to do the same thing. Well, they were up 1-0, They were able to win 2-0 at home and even won both matches of that tie. You would have to go all the way back to 2021 when you would see that Paris Saint-Germain advance on away goals. Again, away goals is no longer a thing. God knows what would have happened there, and where Bayern Munich suffered a home loss. Obviously, we understand that the final back in 2020, a thrilling match where Kingsley Coman scored the decisive goal for Bayern Munich. That was way back when. But let's look at the away and home records. We go to Paris Saint-Germain away in Ligue 1. In their league, they are 10-2-3. Not a terrible record, but for a league that does not have depth, at least compared to Germany, this is not a great away record. And you can see there's some red flags here. You can see against Lille, well, Lille's a better team. Marseille's a better team. Even Monaco's a better team. But even against teams like Rennes, not the greatest. Against teams like Lorient, or excuse my French pronunciation, they dropped some pretty bad matchups on the road in France. Something that, yes, Bayern Munich did drop points against the last place team. They didn't have half their lineup in there. They are getting ready for this match. But you look at their overall home record, 13-2-1. They have also rescued plenty of UEFA Champions League legs at home. This is nothing new, especially for their longtime players, especially Manuel Neuer, a very experienced player who's been in this situation before. He should have a much better match than he did against Real Madrid in the previous and also in the first leg in Paris. With that, yes, I believe that Paris Saint-Germain is a great team. But again, you look at the home record. Bayern holds it at home. They've done it all year. They've done it throughout the last 10, 15 years. They're going to do it again here. They only got 1 goal to overcome. And just like I mentioned at the beginning, they are riding the momentum of 2 unanswered goals to end the match, where they went from a 3-goal deficit to a 1-goal deficit. This is a year for Bayern. They're setting records in the Bundesliga. They're setting records all across the board. They got a great team this year. They're going to the UEFA Champions League final to face Arsenal. With that concludes the 15 minutes of Rocket Launch Sports Picks for today's Wednesday Thrust. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. And tomorrow we will have more picks in the NBA playoffs. And Thursday or Friday we will be debuting some baseball. Alongside, I should be able to give you a code for better tomorrow. With that being said, thank you for watching again. Hope you have a fantastic Wednesday. Enjoy the matchups.